Stop it.
Hey, welcome back. 3 Heroes, 1 Chef. We are back again. We're doing the Art of Warcry. Another one, they keep coming. We got everybody here tonight. Party's going on. I'm Mike Sansom, a.k.a. Armoire Enthusiast 7. Below me is...
Rob Viscomi, also known as your friendly local neighborhood Girth Demon.
Peter Mercencavage, the Saint 16.
Kyle Knapp, the Great White Nope, and...
Did I get it? Every time! Every time!
Got him!
Thanks, Kyle!
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a fun little topic for everybody tonight. We're gonna be going over some list construction methods and how we dig into them. So before we do that, want to humbly ask anybody who has joined in today to smash that like button for us. Give it a little tappy. If you're not subscribed to us. We don't. We're hoping to put some more videos out pretty consistently coming up here, so don't miss them. We think we're fun. If you do too, hop in, subscribe so you don't miss it. But yeah, let's run around the horn and talk about what we have been hobbying on. How about you, Roberto? What's going on with you? What are you doing with your prison shiv brushes?
Dude, you don't even want to know. I left one like face down.
Okay, Peter, what have you been doing now?
I'm finishing up right now a bunch of backlog. I'm painting Marauders, and it's a bad time. It's just a bad time.
Is it the real Marauder sculpts?
It's the original, so it's just like that 90s power fantasy of like just jagged dudes with like flails, but the actual like the flail itself smaller than like the staff of the hilt of the flail. It's ridiculous.
I think that's normal. I think that's medievally accurate, right?
I don't know, dude. I don't know. I'm not a medievalologist. Yeah, I wasn't there, dude. I can't tell you about it. I mean, I wasn't Deus Volton back then. But like, listen, I just painted the trim on a Varangard, and that took me like 2 hours, and I'm kind of just done with it. I'll do it again next year, and just kind of working on stuff like that. I finished up a lot of more orcs. I finished up some Slaves of Darkness stuff. I'm just having a good time, just going through, and I just put together my Stormcast side of the Scaventide box and based it up. So we're ready to start on that, which is pretty exciting. To you, Peter.
Thank you, sir.
Graceful. Well done.
Yeah, I did. Smooth, right?
Currently, I've got 2 more models to finish for my narrative warband for Nova Open next month. So I got to finish those up. I'm leaving for Ireland next week, so I am quickly running out of time to do that. So I got to do that. And then the other day, I just thought about the fact that I don't have a display board yet. So I got to decide how much sleep I want to get before Nova, and we got to decide on that. But yeah, just finishing up painting. Actually been getting a decent amount of casual in-person games in the past couple weeks, which has been nice. Just messing around with some ideas as normal. But yeah, basic hobby, nothing too crazy. Haven't gotten nearly as much painting as I was hoping to, but
preach, Pete. I get it.
That's how it goes. So how about you, Kyle?
Yeah.
It just doesn't get old.
It does not get old at all. No, I mean, I'm the opposite. I actually just came back from vacation down from the Charleston area. As you can see, I'm still feeling a little tropical right now.
Those tropical Bass Pro Shops. Oh no, that's not
I know.
It's Magikarp on there.
Oh, it is. Okay.
But honestly, like I finished up my Pyregeist for narrative, so they're all ready to go. Curse City, I know I mentioned last time I was on. I'm trying to do all the heroes to a really high degree, so I'm done with 6 of the 8. Everything else in the box is done. Just 2 more to go, and then the box is fully complete, ready to go. And then, I could, finally play the game after it's been released from like 10 years ago. So glad to finally have that box fixed. So that should be done hopefully in the next 2 weeks or so, because I won't be traveling too much. So if I can get that done, Oh no, sky's the limit from that point. I don't know what I'll paint. Maybe finish my my
Anything.
OBR or something like that. Maybe I'll put my Skaven half of the Start Collecting box there together. Get those guys ready for the next 5 years when they decide to announce the rules for Skaven for the box, and I'll be good to go. But what about you, Mike?
Well, thanks, Kyle.
The spin move.
Yeah.
I've been working on another just goofy project that it's a long-term project like idea, but I finally started putting glue to plastic. So I'm working on a Corvus Cabal warband. I saw you look at MVP. Sorry.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So just doing a whole bunch of like silly little conversions to make a whole bunch of like non-chaosy models and some chaosy ones, but fit into like this Corvus Cabal warband. Everybody that's just we're super into birds. I think I'm gonna call the warband Fight Milk, just because I have to. It's gonna be, and I want to run two. I can't remember if there's heroes that have it, but bring in two rat allies and call it 4 bodyguards by bodyguards. With the ability in there, but yeah, I've gotten some really fun stuff. I got the new from the new box, from the Skaventide box. I got the mounted Stormcast, because that's just basically like a bird Varangard, so that's going in. Switch up like the top on that one. I got them all over here. I got the Griff. What is it? The Griff Crow? Is that what they're called now? Got one of those little fellas. I've been working on a Gorehulk conversion where instead of him having his cool little scarf, I flipped it, spread him, and then he's got. I'm gonna do it. I'm doing it. He's right here. He's also got a little crow in his.
Oh yeah, spread him.
I hate to break
spread
it
him
to
for
you.
me.
Oh yeah, spread him for me, Gorehulk. Get them wings out, buddy.
You're gonna learn. I'm a peacock. You gotta let me fly.
Look at him go. And then I was just trying to like get rid of some boxes from like my pile, like because the stuff that I've like built one thing out of, I was like, let me finish building some stuff up. So I built the rest of the weird brutes, and I only built one sword out of it, and so I made one of those guys. There's like a cool bird skull that one of the guys wears, and so I put the 2 swords on the back and made that guy into an Auric Corvus Cabal guy too. So yeah, it's really, really fun. Just trying to find models that really fit it. And I think I'm going to bring that for Nova, for the casual event over there. Just really, yeah, it's just, that's what really gets me motivated and like gets my juices flowing for the hobby side of it. Just when I can find really cool conversion ideas and do it 1,000 times beyond what is necessary. So yeah, just been messing with those, doing some running. I'd been running a local league. I came up with a round robin format that has been going pretty well. Kind of tricky because a lot of people were in and out, so that's why we tried to do the round robin format with it. But it's been a good time, been going well. But yeah, just trying to decide on what to lock in for Nova competitive as well, where we're all going to be, all of us, every single one of us. Which is why if you haven't signed up and you're going to be near there, you should totally come see us, come out and hang out with us. Get to try out good old Justin Smith's fantastic looking pack. We're all prepping for it in TTS League, which you should also check out and sign up for. Yeah, lots of practice going on, and yeah, just lots of Warcry. Usually I feel like summer's kind of a lull, but lots of Warcry going on all over the place. But any last words before we jump in?
No, we just got to all build a display board just to make Pete feel bad.
Yeah. Oh, my display board looks great right now. It is so ready. It's completely finished. It might be the best one I've ever done. Might be the best one anyone's ever done.
I'm going to do a shoebox diorama from like 3rd grade where I just take like and glue the lid on and then just make some like clay dinosaurs. I think it's just what we're going to do here.
Love it. I'm here for it.
I think that's
Pete, do that.
If he just does it.
It'll be all right. Shame drives me. I will find a way somewhere here.
Are you the guy from the Da Vinci Code who whips himself? Like that's like your opera's.
I mean, it is Sybarites more than likely, you know. So
he's a real flagellant. He's little Pete's gonna cosplay as a homunculus when he shows up at Nova.
You got like the cauldron there with the skulls like floating in it all.
Scurry around.
You've already got your Gollum cosplay, right? Just with your little loincloth. So that's basically
get the mohawk there. Yeah. That'll be good.
Awesome. Well, let's get into the topic of tonight. And question for all of you: do you know what 3H1C Craig's and Santa all have in common? They're great at making lists. They're all just great at making lists. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about how do you build a list? We're going to kind of cover some more basic, like from the ground up kind of ideas from when you've got nothing, no idea where you want to start. Look at what we're doing there. And then also talk about what to do once you've kind of started and got it into the shape that you kind of want it to be and how to tweak it from that point. So we're going to start off just talking about, from when you've got absolutely nothing, these are the kind of the areas to start with. What are the different ways that you can just kind of generate, a brand new warband? So anybody want to rip it off first?
I mean,
let's make Pete go first, just because otherwise we're going to overtalk him.
Yeah, Pete, you have to go first. Actually, that's actually 100%.
Pete, what do you do? How do you start building your lists?
I mean, I don't think I have one direction I go with it. There is one initial.
I really like it.
Pete listens to One Direction. Everyone take note.
Sorry, Pete got interrupted the first sentence. My bad, Pete.
Right. Something I often think about is, I mean, it's no secret that I like multiple threat lists. So often a lot of my lists get kind of formed around that idea. But usually it's gimmicks. Like, how many gimmicks can I shove into a list? How many different things I can pull from different directions? So like an example would be one of the Krill Boys lists I've been messing around a lot with recently is of the Herc, the Howla model from the more recent Underworld's warband that's got the big old tuba. Right. That it's got the ability to kind of boost the attacks on everybody around him, right? And that and the thought of, I'm quite convinced I want to make Blessed Wound Stab Grots a thing, just because their reaction buffing toughness 4 at 10 wounds when blessed, I just think is a great chaff piece. So I've been kind of messing around with the idea. So I was like, how do I take that and kind of work with it? Well, I know I want a lot of threats in the list to really place off the Howla ability. So, because the more models I got, the more attacks I'm going to get out of that ability. So often in destruction, it's super easy to be like, well, I want the biggest piece on the board, which you can certainly do that. That's a very viable play style. But if I want multiple threats, you're going to run out of points really quick. So kind of way I designed it then, and it's kind of funny because it's surprise soup. I'm a big fan of mixing max heroes, get a thrall in there. As if it's an Underworld's warband, I'm getting a few more models. And like this particular one I'm working on right now, it's a 9 model list, so I'm keeping my activations high. But I'm running, I think it comes out to like 5 threats, because I got Dagok from the newest Underworld set, right? Grack the Hook is another threat, and then a Blessed Fellwater Troggoth, and then a Hardboy boss. So
you're running
Hardboy? Yeah.
I didn't like that at
all. Ooh, Hardboy boss.
Real beat stick, if you will,
But again, you're running multiple threats, right? And then you get a couple Stab Grots, Shank in there with plus wounds, and a Boggle Eye. So I've got 2 sources of nets for gimmicks, right? I'm running 4 different threats you can boost, 2 of which have at least a 2-inch range to feed off of the Krill Boys reaction. And you got 3 cheap models there between Shank and 2 Stab Grots that are all running 10 wounds T4. So the idea there is you're mixing multiple threats with a high model count while still having gimmicks to mess with your opponent's heavy hitting pieces. So it allows for this weird conglomeration of, hey, I can threaten multiple places on the board and remove models while also handicapping my opponent from doing the same. So I don't know. For me, so that original idea, right, is 2 things that interest me. How can I maximize that into a way that's effective?
So Pete, you're kind of going from you've kind of picked some profiles that you like, right? When you say those threats, you're looking at something that can do a lot of damage pretty consistently, right? Mm-hmm. And then
at a lower cost point.
Yeah. So you're trying to get budget versions of things that can do that, and then you're also kind of looking at the abilities that you really like, right? And you're trying to kind of build around those two things, and then kind of filling in around it, right? Like you said, like then you just kind of add the smaller bodies. You've kind of built the core of those profiles that you really like, that you phoned in on, and the abilities that you really like, and then you just try to fill in the rest of the list from that. So kind of like almost like a middle out approach, I guess that kind of is, right? Like you've kind of got these ideas, and you're like, all right, let's build the rest of draw the rest of the owl, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's the same. I've been messing with Spire Tyrants a lot, and it's like, again, surprise, nets. I'm a sucker for nets. Being a long-term Gits player, the ability to just handicap your opponent, go, hey, you're not moving. Now I'm notorious for missing my throws, but the ability to threaten the board that way is just really fascinating. And again, with Spire Tyrants, you can build a multi-threat list that way, because just Bestigor Destroyers are a great piece, which just needs to be played by more people. But yeah,
I agreed. Yeah, I've been dipping back in there too, Pete. Hard not to get excited about them. Kyle, how about you? How do you approach it?
I first look at the factions and realize there's only one, and then just play death. So no,
I hate you. I hate you so much.
So I mean, the first thing I do want to.
Right? I think it kind of is right though.
It's a why.
Like, why do you get drawn to death so much?
Well, it kind of goes to what my next point was here. The real point is, like Rob and I say this to each other all the time. Are you going to bring this list to a tournament? And if you don't win, are you still going to have fun? Like, to me, that's like the biggest thing I had to keep in mind, right? Do I want to bring the sweatiest list and then lose and be like, I didn't really enjoy playing that, even though I enjoy winning, but I lost, right? Or do I bring something that I really enjoy? Maybe it's not the best thing on the tables for that day, but even if I don't win, I'm still going to have a really great time, right? So I always try to keep in mind fun first, winning second, right? But when I look at lists, the thing I enjoy doing a lot is, it's kind of weird, but how do I fundamentally break a part of the game? So I'm going to kind of give two examples of this. So the first example I'll give of this is I built a 11-man Wildercore list. It's the leader, it's one hatchet guy, and then it's 9 twin crossbows. And a lot of people look at it and say, like, it is the most boring looking list ever. They're great. It's not the most crazy list out there. It's not doing anything fancy, but it does everything super consistently, right? How does it break the game? Number one, it's a shooting list, right? Meaning counter does nothing to this team at all. Completely gets rid of that from the game because there's no minimum range on their shooting. They shoot into melee. So I don't have to worry about my opponent ever countering down these really low strength shots, right? Secondly, it is once again a ranged profile, right? Meaning that every single one of my models gets to move 4 inches and then shoot another 8. So I have a 12-inch threat range on 9, 10 models across the board. You can't really hide from me, and I'm always going to be able to shoot at you, or because of that no minimum range, shoot into combat if you decide to charge at me, right? And then the third part that kind of breaks the game is dice rolling, right? You look at some of the best things out there right now. We'll look at a Varangard. Reason it's so good, it charges in there. It's not really 3/5. It uses its ability to increase the number of attacks it has, so it rolls more dice to get more consistent kills. When you're rolling 4 shots at 8 inches on 10 models, it's not hard to do 40 shots, 80 shots. I think most of the games I play them, I usually end up rolling over 200 dice by the end of the game. At a certain point,
starting his own dice tumbling service. He just nine crossbow Wildercore.
But at a certain point, right?
You might need a custom dice tower for that. I got an idea. I'll tell you about it.
You could spike people down. You might miss a lot, but when you're rolling 200 dice, you're probably going to hit the average. So it's super consistent. So breaks the game on a couple formats that, I said, ignoring counter completely, all range profiles, and then just rolling an obscene amount of dice, right? And that's not even to include all the other tricks they have with the quad on the free move. It's got a double. That's a friend shoot, an additional time to, roll more dice, because why not? It just breaks the game fundamentally in that standpoint, because most of the time, if you had an army that had a ton of dice rolling at you, you just use counter, and counter kind of says you can't do that without taking a lot of damage, and these guys say we don't care, right? or maybe I'll attack the game at another angle. So Royal Beast Flayers, one of my favorites, brought it to Nova last year. Highly considered bringing it back again this year for the 1 year reunion. It kind of feels right in my heart. But the reason I break the game with that team is they're the same concept of like, yeah, we're gonna be rolling a ton of dice, right? 3-3-1-3 for the profile, 3 attacks, 3 strength, 1-3 damage. But they could be countered. So you're thinking, well, how are you breaking the game this time? This time with the 11-man list, I'm breaking the game through action economy. I'm stating with 11 models, each one has 2 actions, so that's 22 actions. Off the bat, most teams are going to be 7 to 9. So if they're say at 8, the average, they have 16 activations versus my 22. That means I could literally sit there and wait 6 times before I'm equal to the number of activations they have. Combine that with the Baron's ability on the team, which states that on a double, you can move amount of models. So, say you had double 6, half of that. So, 3 models can then move the value of the dice. So, 3 models can move 6 inches. Or if it's a 4, it would be 2 models can move 4 inches. So, if I had a double 5, double 6, I essentially have 6 free move actions on doubles, meaning now my action economy has gone from 22 actions to 28 actions. So my opponent's going to sit there and go, all right, he's going to wait. If I wait, then I can't attack back, right? Or he moves 5, I move 3. I can't afford to wait because I need to move on to the point. So I could sit there and just go, all right, I'm going to wait, I'm going to wait, I'm going to wait, I'm going to wait. My opponent's done. Cool. Now I'm going to move in and attack. They can't counter because they have no more actions left. I'm going to be able to switch what points I go to. So it's very hard for my opponent to say, oh, I'm going to sit on this point because he's just going to pivot and go to a different point, right? So first one fundamentally broke it using range attacks in your encounter. Second one fundamentally kind of, I'm saying broke because it's not really broken, it's within the rules, but broke the game basically by abusing an action economy.
Yeah, you're min-maxing it, right, Kyle? You're trying to maximize. You have an idea, and it's something that's a good like strategy or like something that has been proven demonstrably to be effective in the game. And then you're just trying to go, okay, how far can I optimize to capitalize on that specific idea? Which is, yeah, it's really innovative. And yeah, I think you're it's annoying how good you are at it because you just make lists that are, man, you're like, he's gonna do one thing and he's gonna crush me with it.
But that's the thing too, right? Like you don't even have to tailor the whole list to one extreme. Like you look at my Adepticon list, right? I kind of took pieces of that and said, all right, I'm still going to have 11 models, so I have a ton of activations, but then I'm going to remove activations using the priest guy from Flesh Eater Courts. I'm going to stop my opponent from using dice abilities, using the Marrow Scroll Herald, right? Reduce damage by unfeeling flesh all at the same time, and then still cheat damage by using the D'Antela zombies to kind of shock people with the crackling arcs, right? So that wasn't like the first 2 examples were essentially spamming a lot of the same to break it. But then the next one is basically utilizing those same tools to break it as well, right? Because I'm still controlling the board from that standpoint. So yeah, I like to kind of push the boundaries of what becomes unfair after a certain point or becomes super frustrating to play against.
And just so to really kind of boil that all the way down to, right? So the Wielder core list that you talked about, right? You're looking at the profiles essentially for that primarily, right? You're looking at there's 4 shots that you can do at 8 inches. So you're looking at you really like what that one model's profile does, and then you're really kind of using that one a whole bunch of times. And then with the Royal Beast Slayers, it's really an ability, right? Primarily that it's that Baron double that gives all those free moves out that really makes that list. So you're building around the ability in those kind of lists, which kind of similar to Pete in that.
And I know those are both horde lists, but like I know a lot of people experimenting on the other end where they say I'm going to bring 5 models, 4 really big boys, and then the code right from Caradron Overlords, which has a double that states until it goes again, your opponent can't use abilities. So you're just going like, all right, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You better have used your stuff, otherwise you're going to be not in luck and using it this turn at all. So you don't have to spam models to break the game. You could also just not bring basically any models and still break the game,
It can't be 0, but you can really whittle it down, right?
Yeah, it's always fun to tell your opponent, like, all those dice you have, you can't use any of them.
Or hurry up and use them. Let me get the tempo and force you to use them really early with that kind of stuff, for sure.
Something to keep in mind, too, like, Kyle's Adepticon list was a really good example because I love building lists like that, and the fact of the abilities that you can bring with a list like that is just mind-blowing amount of different things you can do. And there's two very different approaches with that, right? Because some people like going, hey, these are my 3 or 4 abilities that I'm going to consistently use, and that's where that ends, because they don't want to keep track of the other stuff, or maybe that's just the effective way that warband works, right? And that's a very functional way to play. Or you can try to give yourself paralysis and hurt your brain and have 25 abilities that you're constantly swinging around.
Yeah,
with. But
to your point, Pete, by the way, I brought 3 pages because I had 26 abilities I could have used on that list from Adepticon. So I felt bad because the opponents would look and be like, I'm not going to read 3 pages of abilities. I'm not going to be able to memorize all this in the 5 minutes I have before the game.
Showing up with their one box, and you're like, here's my dissertation on why I'm an asshole. And dang it.
Okay, Kyle, just do whatever you want. I don't even care anymore.
Just roll the dice. Just roll the dice. Just do it.
Let it happen.
Do it.
But it can be a very fulfilling play style, though, because you're bringing so many tools to the table. And yeah, are you going to be able to use them all? No, but it's like a jackknife, right? You got something in there. Now it's whether or not you're going to remember at the right time. Yes, this is when I'm going to bring it.
Oh, I need the toothpick right now.
But having right. But yeah, having all those abilities is a great play style, to be perfectly honest. I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah. So for mine,
Swiss Army knife.
There you go. Yeah, it's whatever. We knew what you were talking about, Pete. We got you.
I was just trying to figure it out. I'm a little slow in the uptake. I was like, jackfruit? Those are pretty cool.
Jackknife.
I said jackknight. I was
gonna let Rob talk again. His brain shuts down with his mouth slows down. He's like the bus in Speed. He's just got to keep going.
Yeah, dude, if I stop, it's a problem. I just detonate internally. Everything. You guys got to get the ponchos ready.
We already know what Rob's list building is. It's to argue with himself to the point he loses hair up until the night before.
Yeah.
Still complain about it and then just get second place. It's
Make a list. So. Spend 30 hours practicing with it. Hate yourself. Right. Go with it anyway. Do really well.
It's a foundation for success.
And then be sad that you didn't do
really better. The self-hatred that makes it work.
Yeah, the deprecation really just brings me to new levels of honing my edge, my sword. Not a gray on this baby though. Don't you worry about that. Got this lush mane coming in. Whose turn is it next? Yours, Mike?
Yeah, I can go mine.
I don't care.
Yeah, so oftentimes I kind of take a different approach. The biggest thing that I enjoy about the game, honestly, is kind of storytelling through my models in a way. Not necessarily playing narratively with the models all the time, but more creating models that demonstrate something, telling a story with what they look like and all that kind of stuff.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's such a creative outlet for me, and so I just love it. And so any place that I start, I have to care about what the models are going to look like. I really struggle just putting the standard models that GW makes. They look amazing, but it's just anybody can have those, right? And so I'm looking at what can I do? How can I ruin this model by cutting parts off and gluing other parts to it? How can I completely bastardize it so that it's unrecognizable? So usually that's where my list ideas start, and it's really hard to say which one comes first, but it's either that part of it where I have an idea, or I kind of have a faction that I know that I want to try to mess with, and it's usually some yin yang of equal parts of both of those is where I get started, where I also want to play good lists, right? I don't want to show up to a competitive event and I don't mind playing lists that I know that aren't quite as powerful, but I might as well try to make the best version once I make these lists. So oftentimes I have all these meme lists and stuff like that, right, where the models are kind of jokey and they're really fun to look at, and then I can have fun with that, and I can really express myself with dressing up like a moron, wearing a headband that doesn't fit and trying to seeing a quarter of my vision all day. So I'll try to, usually it comes from I'll see a model that I'm inspired by within a warband, and I go, okay, what happens if I play that warband, and what does that warband look like from the creative side of it? And then I really try to twist the knife and really do the same thing that you guys have talked about, and we'll kind of get into the more advanced practices and stuff of honing those warbands, like you were saying, Rob, too. Kind of after we go over the basics here, but like really, trying to find a way to make that competitive in a sense. So not just going like, I brought all these models and they're just terrible like profiles and stuff like that. But, so I either start with looking at a faction that I really like, where it's like, all right, is there some cool, kind of like you guys are like, all right, there's some cool abilities in there, or do these models really work for what I'm looking to present on the board? And I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to like, I will play literally anything. if I have an idea about it and I think it looks cool, I'm in. I don't have a faction, I don't have a Grand Alliance that I'm just like, I got to play them. I love them, everything about it. I love exploring all the different and weird edges of the game. And the models are usually the biggest tour guide for me doing that. So so just looking at the faction or going by the models, I think are the two things that I really kind of resonate with when I'm getting started and brainstorming on a brand new list. Robert?
I love the whole thing you talked about with like just expressing yourself through the story of it. Like for me, just picking the Grand Alliance or picking something like that, like expressing myself through list like writing or how I'm feeling about portraying the way I want to play is kind of something that like goes into the thought of it. I primarily build around ability or reactions is pretty much how I play. I like reaction stuff because it's a way to interact on my opponent's turn, which is instead of I go, you go, it's I go, then you go, but I'm going while you go, then I get to go again. So I gain tempo. This is mine. It's my toy.
I play Pot of Greed.
Yeah, dude, seriously. Draw a card. I'm just trying to harness some big Kaiba energy, and it's pretty much where we go to. BKE. I just want to tell my opponents they're third-rate duelist with a fourth-rate deck. No, I really like interacting with my opponent on their turn, and I think that's really cool. And that's how I got to looking at Cruel Boys, and then when I read, oh man, like their reaction doesn't say melee only, and then I found like Hrothgorn profile, I'm like, what if I just Overwatch people? Like people come in and I'm playing Kill Team, and it was a way for me to attack the format in a different way as opposed to just kind of trying to play like I go, you go. And that's one of them too, right? The other one was like when I was like playing Cities of Sigmar, and I first came with like the reaction built control list, with like flag pulling all the different pieces with the rune marks, and then I started branching out and kind of going more into like that's a secondary to like what they could do. But again, it's always centered around abilities. Like that flag was the big ability for me. Is like, what's better than just saying, hey, I get to pull as many people as I want 6 inches towards me after they already did something, or pull them into engagement to mess up their sequencing.
I mean, that's like Kyle's, right? Like Kyle's like, oh, it's great. I can do, a couple of times I can give up to like 3 extra ones. You just go, anybody who's nearby, let's all go for a walk.
Yeah, everybody, all the boys coming on in, right? I get all the milkshakes to my yard, and
come on, everyone, let's get them.
Yeah, pretty much. And then same thing with like looking to build for packs and stuff. Like I look to see what abilities can exploit certain missions and try to kind of build towards that. Where Pete kind of builds the muscle and then shapes the skin around it and then adds bone to support it. Where Kyle's like, yeah, it's a terrible thought, right? Kyle's like kind of like building like
Charlie from Always Sunny in Philadelphia with like the chart on the wall.
That's me. That's exactly where I live.
I was thinking of
Sylvia.
The mail never stops. The mail never stops.
OBR. He builds the bone constructs and then he stretches flesh over them.
Yeah,
I just think it's funny like how opposite people can be. I'm playing the game so my opponent can't play the game. Rob's playing the game so only he plays the game. So
no, they play the game. I play the game when they play the game.
Yeah, Rob's not good at sharing. It's also my turn when it's your turn.
I actually realize that's the case now.
Mine's like you just don't get a turn.
big garbage energy. Like that's okay. I guess. It's pretty much what I like doing though, and I think that's like a lot of fun to kind of just like offer my opponent like a choice. Like, hey, if you do that, I could do this. If you do this, so like it's like a different thinking level. And if you practice out the list on that, then you kind of have the edge of like, I know what I'm going to do, and I know what if you do, or if you don't. So no matter what, it's up to you, and it adds another layer of sequencing and thought, and it puts a little bit more mental pressure on my opponent. Now, if like an opponent's like somebody who's like very well accustomed to like other things, or like I'm at an upper table and I know that they know how to handle it, it's still something they have to factor in additionally. Like they know what they're walking. When Pete knew he was playing, he's like, I'm going to walk in and have to take the hit anyway. So it's just an additional stressor on people. And I like playing that. It's a lot of fun. They still get to play. I don't get to say you don't get to play. I just get to play when you get to play. And then I get to play after. And that's really how I want to. It's really how I want it. It's not like Control, but it's like
it's a different kind of control.
It's a different kind of control.
Anytime you can set up your opponent to have to choose between two bad decisions.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that because you're constantly, that's part of the game is the gimmicks, right? When I say the gimmicks is setting your opponent up to be like, yeah, you got a choice now and neither one of them is ideal. And I'm going to play off of either choice you make.
And that choice is something that you're getting value out of, no matter what, right? There's some intrinsic advancement of the game state towards your side once they make that choice, either way. And it's up to them to try to figure out the direction that long term gets them the lowest negative feedback from it.
Those sportsmanship scores, I always get a 0. I don't know why. No, just no. I never.
Maybe because the way you roll your dice.
The casino dice demand a great huck against a half-opened dice tray. Dude, bro, I have to take 2 hands because they don't shake in one hand, and I have to like slam them sideways on the 35-degree angle.
Shaker. You should bring your own 20-foot roulette table, or no, what is it?
Craps table.
Craps table. Yeah. Hey, do you mind if we sit on the end so I can unpack this and then get your neighbor to blow on it?
I have to literally like my dice tray is half open and then half closed, and then I have to like put a wall of my hand up so the dice could bounce off and not shoot off the thing. I should just invest in gravity dice, but I'm really thinking about buying like 6 to 7 packs of casino dice and then taking my drill with the Dremel and after each match just drilling out the dice.
It's a flex. No one to risk using one that's got a tiny piece chipped off from the felt.
Right, dude. I'm gonna just drill right down and give them.
So the entry fee was $20, but the cost was in the thousands.
So I think they asked me. I think I told I filmed with our British friends today, and they're like, "Are they gonna just let you bring a drill bit in there?" I'm like, "I don't see why not." And they're just like, "I don't know if."
What are they gonna stop you?
They don't. No rule that says you can't.
Yeah, I
thought this is America.
We might make a Stepbrothers special rule that says no power tools. I don't know. I don't know if we trust you with that, Rob.
Nah, that's good. I'm
just
gonna
my
do
toothbrush.
Yeah, dude. That I'll just
knowing Rob, you just forget the drill somewhere in the convention anyway. So
Rob's hand drilling it out. He's got.
Has anybody seen a loose drill? Please report. A Ryobi drill set. Please report to the front.
Rob comes back, no batteries. Just to make it clear, so everybody understands, Rob bought a fantastically useful and really well made pack of objective markers at Adepticon. Was there 5 of them or 6 of them in there?
There were 6.
And how many of those 6, Rob, would you say left the convention hall that we were playing in that day with you?
3.
Okay. How many live at your house now?
Kyle found them and gave me some. They were underneath one of the table. The whole table was my garbage. It was insane.
Yeah, I found his objective markers. I found his dice. I found his Red Bull that he left back. I'm like, this is mine now. He's gone. So like, I was like,
and then
what
again,
did he leave? Jesus.
We're gonna start
again.
We're gonna start labeling everything with Girth Demon on it. And if you're at a convention with Rob, please return it to the Lost and Found.
Dude, I think we should just let him keep it. If they play, Rob can try to win his stuff back. Like
that's fine. I like
prize.
That. But if he keeps.
With last Jersey tourney, he was losing them again. So I mean,
yeah, he had to give them back to me. Now I have 5. I don't know where the 6th is.
And that's when Rob is like, "Yeah, I'm going to borrow your terrain for the tournament." He wonders why I was nervous. Like it's like he can't hold on to his objective markers.
Oh, I gave it away his prizes, kinda.
Peter helped me a lot, to be fair. Like Peter packed it up. So
that's good. Yeah, Peter's dad, and he knows how to take care of children.
I'm a dad.
Hey, Pete, that's some nice Gur terrain behind you there. Where'd you get that from?
Rob started with 6 sets of Gur terrain and ended the day with 2. We're not sure where the other 4 went.
Those Gnarloks just walked right off. That's what they're known for.
I just ate one. Just consumed the ribcage part of it. Just consumed it. No, dude, it's fun though. I like playing. Like we're about to talk about the the advanced techniques, right? Like, because we all pretty much.
Want to summarize. I just want to run through them all again real quick, and if you want to go through them round two, but just kind of listing all the ones that we listed there, just to have like a nice, succinct and concise summary of all of them real quick.
Yeah, I'll wheel it after. That's fine.
Yeah. Go ahead, rattle it off. Just the ones.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, like you're either working on like building like from the big stuff, taking it from like the top going down. You're building it from the bottom up, right? You're focusing on a faction, an ability. You're focusing on a story that you want to tell that's going to go in line with how you want to build it. There's so many different ways to build a good list and make it, and finding the pieces that are really fun for it. And if you could tell, like each one of us has a completely different play style. Peter's building middle out, which is like pretty interesting, right? Like now that you break it down, like we used to just joke and be like, "What did you 4 threat list?" But really, it's
now too. Peter's. If we can you imagine the day that Peter can make a 6 threat list and have every deployment be just as valuable as every? Look at him. Ooh,
it's called Quester Soulsworn. What are you talking about?
That's fair. Yeah,
it is fair. It is fair. Right.
It's not.
So
6 relictors,
whoa.
just throw hammers all day, play Diablo like you're hammered in. Come on.
I mean, yeah, hammer time is a legitimate play style. It's true.
Some old Gauntlet Dark Legacy style of play.
1,000%.
That game was amazing.
When you use the quad, you just yell at your opponent, BFG!
I am getting closer though, Mike. The Spire Tyrants list was 5 threats, so I mean it's getting there.
It exists. Yeah, Spire Tyrants, I think, is definitely. We just gotta, if we can just tweak it a little bit more.
I just see like a station on Peter's desk. One says like 3-6, the other says 4-8, the other says 5-10, and then he stares at it for 10 minutes and then swipes the 3-6 off the table, screaming about it like it's not enough.
That's how Pete grades his son on how well he does on things. He goes, "Well, that was more of a 4-8 job today, but we want to be at a 5-10. We can get it up to a 5-10."
He actually has a shrine in his closet for the legendary 612 that may come at some point.
Right.
Beautiful.
Right.
Don't even get me started at 816.
Secretly, I'm just working on tearing bite profiles to be 6'9", so that way I could just dab on people when I get to the table. Like tearing bite 6'9", and they're just like, I missed all.
Well, and then we have 4 moves, 20 wounds.
Oh, 4 moves, 20 wounds.
First edition, that quad, it's like, yes, by the way, I just did 35 damage to your model. You can take him off now. Next.
Yeah, Peter's like, tips his fucking top hat from goddamn ancient Victorian England. That's not ancient. I just said a lot of words that just went together, and that they didn't. So
it was fun to watch the stream of consciousness happening.
I'm trying.
It was like watching a movie.
I'm like Catcher in the Rye, but a person, not a book. It's really bad. I just might have.
Did you try to get banned? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know, dude. I'm working on something. I don't even know what it is yet.
Hey, Rob, have you ever thought about any sort of advanced techniques for Warcry in list building?
I was talking, and then everybody got distracted about everything. But
we would never.
So no matter what the technique that we're all building with top down, I know, Mike, you do top down a lot. You build out some big threats and then you just kind of pepper it in with whatever, right? Mm-hmm. No matter.
Used to. I would say I don't do it as much anymore. But yeah, there's usually 3 Korgorats, whatever else I can fit is fine.
Right. When I first met you, right? That's what it was. And every one of us has kind of evolved past their own ideologies and kind of just added on to it from learning from each other. But no matter what, a lot of us really we do something in common. That's an advanced list building, and it's using either allies or other different units in faction that kind of cover your weaknesses, reinforce strengths, and add utility and flexibility. I'm a big fan of silver bullets. When I was building when I was building Cities of Sigmar, I was looking for the Bulwark rune mark to synergize with my faction, so I can do anybody within 3 can borrow the Bulwark rune mark and react to get toughness. I found Domitan Storm's Eye, and it was kind of a laugh because at 200 points, I could just take an anti-prime, right? I could just go, I'm a big boy. Ooh, look at me, right? Well, no, I could just take that, and I could threaten a 6-inch move with 6T, 30 wounds, and sit there and Wizard Blast you. Or I can threaten, I have a quad. What is he going to do with that quad? I can just roll a lot of dice and just delete an entire like deployment off if I really need, if I can, if like the luck on the dice is there. So like it's finding these niche things to kind of fill in roles. Like I like having AoE. I used to really like having ways to deal, like tech to deal with shooting. So that's where I got into Cities of Sigmar and reacting. Oh, they can react to range shots. How can I cover this? How can I increase this? Oh, we're lacking a hammer. I found Vulcan Runefather, who's similar to Peter's Hardboy, and I'm
it makes me it just immediately my body just has a message that sends down to you. We all hate this.
I think it's the greatest thing in the world. I mean, it's definitely the word hard. It's just art, right?
Yeah.
Like it's correct.
You just got to be a pirate. That's all.
Yeah, Peter's grammatically correct orcs are really the next warband he's gonna work on.
Hoity orcs, thank you.
Dressed in Victorian outfits, like
they're about to get into transatlanticism and open up a book of Robert Frost somewhere, right after they just scalp an entire population. Yeah, I mean, like it's really
describing
like
the blood slicks
for pretty much. It's for me, it's like finding things that can cover, reinforce my synergies, but give me kind of an out to what I think I'm going to see. If I'm seeing a lot of hordes, I kind of want to look into like an AoE option, right? Like the quester that has the triple that does searing light. And if he's within 3 inches, it does like 3-inch AoE damage, just flat for like whatever value triple. Like it's kind of a neat thing if you think you're going to go against a lot of hordes. Or if I think I'm going to go against FOMOs, when I was working on the cities list again, I put in the Vulcan, Runefather, right? Vulcan Flameseeker Runefather. Mm-hmm. He had the elite rune mark, so it synergized with my art or with my warband. And then he had a quad that can burn you out flat out, which I did to a FOMO, or he can use the double to kind of just bypass and swing up against big armored threats. So it's finding ways to do that and utilize covering those weaknesses and going through that is really going to pump your ideas that you take. So you want to find something big, maybe you find something to kind of add a little bit of movement to it. Maybe you want to go bottom up, find something that's going to reinforce it. Pete, how do you look for like tech spots, niche things like that?
Just mass amounts of research, to be honest. Like I'll be that guy that just like scrolls through warbands going like, that's an interesting profile, let's tuck that in the back of my brain for later. I guess it's important too, like some people don't like souping as much as like Rob and I do. Really all of us, we all definitely dive deep into that pool. But there's a lot of different, that's one of the beauties of Warcry, right? I think that's what makes it really special in a lot of ways compared to like Kill Team, is because of the warband building is so wide. There's so many directions you can go. You can create your play style and find a way to make multiple warbands that fit that play style. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not just going like, I have to play this warband because it's the only one that kind of fits the way I want to play. Right? You can find a way to do that. And then on top of that, like important things to remember too is like thralls. Everybody forgets about thralls. There's places. I mean, Death, Dire Wolf's a great piece. I mean, I'm a big fan of Furies and Chaos because that fly at 8-inch move, you can really hop across the board and create issues that way. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge fan of Fellwater Troggoths and Destruction, especially once you bless them. I mean, there's places to go. I mean, the Order. Nobody cares about giving thralls to Order, so we don't talk about them.
It's just weird that they don't have any, right? It's just like, I don't know if it's just a unusual.
I mean, like, not to give you the actually, but thralls just means slave, so it's like they're not going to have those.
No, but it doesn't have to be that, right? It could be like a hype man,
means.
Right?
Some kind of hype man. Oh, we'll get the hype man category opened up for you tomorrow. Don't worry about it.
But so it's just looking at all the different angles you can go with it, right? And usually, like, I came a lot from Destruction early on, so it coming from a plethora of really good hero options that you can pull from to fit how you want to. You can find something that's going to fit the point cost, right? So it's just kind of learning how you want to play, and you're going to be able to build to that. I don't know. Like for me, again, it's abilities and action cheating. What are the weaknesses in the list? And that's what I look at to build from there. Like when I played a lot of Gloomspite Gets for tournaments, it was usually I needed heavy hitters that could action cheat because Gits couldn't punch. Gloomspite Gits just don't have the punching power. They got the gimmicks, they can play easy things, but they really struggle in sticking around and dealing high amounts of damage. So again, I'm filling gaps that way. And just like how Rob was talking about Vulcan Runefather into Cities of Sigmar Castellite host, he brings that kind of lower cost punch that just fits really well. It's just recognizing, okay, what's the weakness in my list, and then how can I compensate for that in an effective way? I mean, it's not to keep talking about it, but like Sybarites right now. Sybarites suddenly got so much more flavorful when Vexmore came out, and that's a lot of chaos in general. But it brought this piece.
Chaos got salt in Vexmore. Yeah, would you like to add some salt to the dish?
Yeah.
Yep.
Shout out Chris Hyde.
But at the same, like, it's that staple piece, or suddenly it's like you got all these speedy guys running around doing their thing, but you still have a staple piece that's not costing you 300 points. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's funny how adding that one piece changes a list so much.
It's doing something that the rest of the Grand Alliance isn't doing, and so it offers so much synergy, utility, all these kind of really incredible things, hitting power, great profile. It just does so much that the Grand Alliance doesn't have. And I think all of us here are pretty much in agreement. I know I've been banging the drum pretty loud, but the reason why Vexmore feels oppressive is because there's nothing else like it, which doesn't necessarily mean that Vexmore is the problem. And I think in most of our opinions, the rest of the Grand Alliance is actually the problem. It doesn't have anything. It wasn't powerful enough, and so it finally got a piece that was okay. This is a really good competitive staple, and until we get some other ones, that's when it's really gonna Vexmore is gonna become less prolific and ubiquitous across the Grand Alliance. But just because it needs more tools, to be at the same level as Vexmore instead of fewer, because that's how you build lists. You want to look at side grades. Destruction Soup's a great example of that, right? Where it's just like, okay, how many points do you have left and how hard do you want to hit? And you can just go, all right, anywhere between 155 points all the way up to 310 or 320 now? Yeah. You can find whatever smashability you need from it, and so, having but also similar things, that you can go sideways on with the same points value that just have slight little tweaks with like clawback and, all that kind of stuff. So sorry, Pete, do you have anything else to run through with that one?
No, I think I'll just kind of play off what I think I've said enough there. I'll play off of whatever you guys have.
Wow. Yeah. We're sick of Pete. We're sick of Pete talking. Can you believe that? Who would have thought?
I'll poke in eventually here. You guys take it.
I think that was perfect and succinct on it, right? Like finding and like there's also two different like lines of thinking. Like, do I want to shore up a weakness, or do I want to go in and on an all-in skew and just hyper enable what I'm doing, right? Like, and then there's trying to have your cake and eat it all too, which is what I did with like cities. Like can I get this and this and have this with this and have this do this? Like, I think I just stumbled upon, like, luckily finding pieces that I need to do it, and then I guess kind of trying to be a hipster and just be like, I'm gonna play Dominton because nobody's playing him, and I think he's sweet. But he also he fit it. It wasn't perfectly.
A perfect fit though, right? There were still sacrifices you had to make with that Cities of Sigmar list to get the output that you were looking for. You had to sacrifice some of the synergy within the list, right? And so it's about recognizing, realizing what a different pieces add, and then understanding what not having them also takes away, right? The classic like opportunity cost discussion that comes up in it with, what am I having to give up by going this route, and just understanding very clearly what the identity of your warband is and how, like Pete said, the play style that you're looking to do, and then, the synergies within that you're trying to reinforce.
Right. Absolutely. It's tough, and you can't like always do it all, which is the tough part. And depending on your Grand Alliance,
which is a good thing. I think that's a really good thing for the game.
Yeah, it is. Right. Like depending on what you want to do, like finding a hammer piece for death is hard, right? But they can find.
There's one good one.
Comparatively, right? Like there's a couple good, like Wilder's fantastic, like Vargolf Courtier could work in a pinch, like even though it's expensive. Like there are options, but compared to like, do I take a Tyrant, a Gutlord? Do I take a Mega Boss? Do I take a Clawback? Right? Like Destruction has those, right? And that's where it is. Now you have Chaos having like, I have hammers, I have these things, but they don't really have utility pieces. Their utility pieces are pull pieces. They don't have anything that's granting extra actions where you have order with Calthea, you have order like doing all these things to give bonus moves or shots, questers. So depending on what you're in and what you want to do is also another consideration of like how you want to go about it. You want to cheat movement, go into order, right? Or maybe you go into RBF and try to skip some ghouls around. There's ways you have to do it, and kind of like how you plan and where you want to play towards is like another consideration of like the advanced list building strategy.
Another, that teleports right now, lots of so hot right now, teleports so hot, but like, it's like the maximum level of movement cheating, right? Like you're like,
Right.
oh, it's not like I'm getting 2 actions, I just go there, I choose, and I exist in that space now, right? Which is why I think, they're so powerful, and that we've really been seeing them pop up in a lot of lists. Kyle, how do you tweak, how do you tinker?
So I got kind of like 4 things I'll talk about. 2 of them kind of similar, so it's kind of closer to 3. But I'll say the first one is, one, I'm gonna look at the mission pack. Like, no matter what I'm playing, I'm gonna look at the mission pack and kind of see how can I twist my list to better match. And we talked about this a lot, kind of in our previous episode, talking about the missions at Nova and what we could be doing, what our plan is. But like, just to give you like a great example, like something I'm looking at right now is the Flesh Eater Courts. And why am I looking at that? Right? You guys talked about meta counters, right? Vexmore is good. Baffling Parlay just says Vexmore. I don't care. You're only attacking me once, maybe, because I'm going to just knock it down by 1. But specifically, I'm looking at the Skinnerkin, and I'm looking at them because they have this cool double that essentially says 1 model gets to move, his friend gets to move, and then his friend gets Inspiring Presence and gets to go again after me. And I think, well, why is that good, right? Well, I mean, look at a treasure mission, especially ones where you have to loot. I could activate loot the treasure, move. My friend goes, moves, picks up the treasure, and then moves, and then tells the other guy to move again on another double, right? So all of a sudden, I've looted 2 treasures and just ran 9 inches of my models before my opponent could even do anything, right? So would that be good on every mission pack? Probably not, right? You're still paying the cost for these models. But that ability could be really good on that specific mission. And if I'm trying to win a tournament, I'm looking to win every mission possible. And if I could take 1 mission and say, unless my opponent has, crazy shooting or some crazy specific counter to this, they're not going to be able to stop me from doing this. So that's kind of like one way I'll look at it for sure, which kind of goes into the next flow, which I'm going to say, looking how my dice are being spent. I'm talking about my wild dice, right? I'm not a fan of having necessarily 2 abilities that use the same type of wild dice that are required, because the other half of that is bringing something in that it gives you options in those dice abilities is also really good. So the examples that I'll give on this, I'll talk about that Royal Beast Player list again, right? The list wants high doubles, right? Really, nothing else in the list wants to use high doubles besides the Baron. You might want to use it for the wielder charge on occasion, but overall, those doubles are really just being used for Baron. And then you think about like, oh, well, what if I brought in the Skinnerkin? Well, then you're fighting for doubles, right? So maybe this is not the tool I want to bring for this list. Even though Skinnerkin are good at what they do, they might compete with what my core game plan is going to be. But then you look at like, well, you say, all right, Wielder the Blade wants to double for charge, right? Wielder the Blade also wants a triple to resurrect. So this is kind of the opposite of the coin, where I'm bringing a model for options. Do I want to pack tactics? Absolutely. It's one of my favorite abilities in the game, right? Just blow something up for free. It's crazy, right? But having the option of being able to move that wielder the blade, resurrect the body in your face to block you, resurrect a body on a point to have 2 people on a point after flying 12 inches, right? It gives me the option of like, yeah, I could kill on a triple or I could resurrect on a triple. So it kind of shows that you might want to bring something not just for the abilities it does because it's required. For example, if you wanted to bring a movement ability into a slow warband, you need it because it's required to get that warband off the ground and going, versus just saying, it's nice to have, but I don't need to do this, right? But the last thing I'll bring in is I often like bringing a piece in that is completely perfect on its own. It doesn't need anything else. It's really solid on its own. And I think like the best example of this right now is nearly any dispossessed leader. The Rune Lord is something I've been championing for a while. It's 115 points. It's 20 wounds. Does it have a great attack profile? No. It brings a pretty cool double where you can increase the strength of an ally by half the value of a dice within a couple inches. But really, what's strong about it is the double to count as 3 bodies on a point, right? So no matter what list I'm bringing, even if I bring a standard 8-9 man list, by having that in there, I'm not saying I'm going to use it, but my opponent now has to have in their brain that at any point this guy can just say, hey, I count as 3 models, right? So they have to look at it and deal with it appropriately because it's so tilting on its own, right? It just changes the game dynamic purely by existing. And other models that I would say kind of fall in that category is we already mentioned Wielder the Blade, right? Has a resurrection ability. It can fly around. Briar Queen does the same thing. You look into Chaos. You talked about Vexmore. Even if Vexmore just sits on a point and doesn't activate for a while, it just basically tells your opponent on a double, I get to move 6 inches, attack 2 more inches. So anything within 8 inches is a chance of just getting one shot. Your opponent's that's a control space, right? Your opponent has to think about it. Even if you don't even do it, he just sits there and says, nope, I'm going to sit on this point, right? It's just controlling that on its own. And the last one I'll give is kind of like a counterpiece to that. Looking into orders like at Calthea, right? Calthea is just taking their list and bringing it and making it hyper. So you have to keep in mind, like, do I go after this piece and try to take it out because it is so tilting and it can kind of like put a stop to their list? But your opponent's going to plan around that, right? They're not going to let you just charge in there and take out like one of their core pieces. So just kind of like re-reference like the 4 points I made is I bring a piece for the pack. I bring pieces to either give options of abilities or kind of like required abilities, or just be such an impactful piece that your opponent needs to warp their game just around that model on the board.
So yeah, I think Kyle, just to like make it super simple, right? So the first one with the Skinnerkin, you're talking about adding synergies into your list, I think, right? You're synergizing or you're synthesizing this
but to the pack and not necessarily to the team, right?
Sure.
Because like you could bring that Skinnerkin with like Nighthaunt. Do they synergize the hunt? Not at all. They don't care, right? But they're just synergistic to the pack itself. So it kind of tilts your opponent from that standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. And then what was the second one again?
Bringing things either kind of like synergistic abilities.
That's right. I think I meant to say utility for the first one. You added utility with
because the second one I said is like you're just bringing a model that provides options of abilities, but also keeping in mind, do you want to necessarily bring a model that has competing abilities? And like the best way, like I try to think about that is like, for some crazy example, we live in a world where you have a Wielder the Blade and a Calthea. Both want to triple, both want to use it. You're not going to probably bring them in the same list because they're going to be fighting every single turn who uses it. They're going to sit there and be like, well, if I don't resurrect something, I'm wasting my time. If I'm not giving free actions, I'm wasting my time, right?
That's a good I'm gonna jump in right there. That's a really good point, though. For when you're building a list, you want to make sure, like, because I especially like to build towards abilities, you want to make sure you don't have too many competing models that compete for, like, say, triples or doubles. I like to have something that's like, I like triples, I like how this one has doubles. You don't want to take an ability hungry warband and then jam in an ability hungry ally.
Which is what I was trying to say. Like,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off on that. It was a really good jumping point for it. Sorry.
Yeah, because that's what I was trying to say in terms of like bring in an ally that doesn't compete with your abilities, but brings in maybe abilities is really, really useful. Like
it's a fine line, right? Like it's a really fine line, and you have to understand what kind of core abilities for a warband, like what makes it happen, what do you have to use, right? And I think that, like you said, Kyle, the Baron's a great example of that. It's really the whole plan, right? You're really hoping to use the Barons and Royal Beast Flayers to make that warband work, and so you don't want to be competing against that one. But there are times when you can the flex option maybe, and there's turns when even when you're built around kind of a single idealized ability or something like that, there are times when you're not going to use that, and that's what being a good player is about, is recognizing when, I need to pivot based on board state. What am I looking at in front of me right now? How do I change, how do I maybe leave my strategy A and go, strategy B over here? But, and I think that's where Pete's been there for ages and ages, right, Pete? You just like, let me have a suite of abilities, and I'm not planning on using all of them, but I'm planning on using all of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's the ability to function on the board and create threat without having, and Kyle said that a little bit. Like, big thing with me is I love nets. I have lists that run 6. Am I going to have all 6 of them?
Yeah, you got 10 now. You made a 10 net list, Peter, the other day. Yeah. Peter's out of his mind, everyone. Please send help for Peter.
Right. But the ability is the fact that I threaten any part of the board with shutting that model down. You can't get away from the fact that I can do it to you.
That's kind of like why Unmade, right? That's why Unmade would be good if their leader wasn't so just hyper expensive for what it does. Like, everything is a net. So at any point in time, I can go, that thing's probably not going to participate in this round in a meaningful way.
It's a super cool play style too. Like, and super cool models that have like.
Sorry, Rob. It's the same thing with like the Brugit, right? That's why Brugit saw the 20-point hike that it got, right? It's how many tournaments I could say I used Loonshine Potion maybe 3 times the entire tournament. Yeah. But it was the fact that I could threaten Loonshine Potion every match, every round. Right. Yeah. And I think that's great. Having those abilities.
Kind of like that kind of speaks to like the, a broader statement about what the current meta of the game is. And it's probably always been this way, but I think it's just very visible right now, is that flexibility is really key, right? Not having to just charge ahead and do the same thing over and over and over again, but like having the ability to, pivot when you need to. The more options you have available with those abilities means you've got more opportunities for those abilities. Every ability has a perfect use case, right? If you've got 50 abilities, you've got, 49 more chances to have a perfect use case come up than you did with an original just single.
I mean, that's where I'm going to like politely disagree on there, Mike. I think there is a ton of room for more simplistic abilities, right? To have a really solid warband. Like I talk about like the 11-man crossbow list. It has like 2 abilities you're going to use the entire game.
Yeah.
That's it. But it just does everything so well. It's perfectly fine.
Right.
And if you look at if you look at it like a more, say, like we'll say even like simplified version list, right? So we'll talk about like a whole bunch of chaff models, maybe a Varangard and a Fomeroid Crusher, right? Realistically, you're probably only using like 2 abilities the entire game, but they're just such strong abilities that you want to use them every turn to keep a consistent game plan, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
So like that's what I'm saying. Like flexibilities are nice, and to you and I think takes the game to the next level for a high-end competitive player. Because to Pete's point, like you never know if I'm going to net, you never know I'm going to Loonshine Potion, you never know. You can't predict my move anymore. But there's something to be said by having a simple list and saying, "Oh yeah, you could predict my move, but you can't stop me from doing it." You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's kind of like Cruel Boys is too, and just to again politely counter to the counter too, Kyle. I think that especially like that Wildercore list, right? Like there's a matchup for that list that you lose, and it is Cities of Sigmar. Yeah, you don't win. You do not win that mission in 90% of games because you shoot and you're unless you're rolling crazy hot, and so like I think those are the times when like because you like it's built in a way that is simple and it's so effective in its simplicity. And again, this is kind of why we wanted to have this conversation, right? Is because there's so much nuance. None of this is black and white. We can make statements that are helpful for understanding the game, but you have to understand the kind of the specifics of each. That you have to understand each warband has its own weaknesses, its own strengths, and stuff like that, and understanding what to do against them. And how do you counterplay against those, right? I think that's why it's so much fun to list build, because like there's no perfect list. There is not a single perfect list that can win every single game no matter what against every single matchup in the game. And that's why it's this constant kind of like Ouroboros, we're just chasing our tail, like something beats something, a circle of suck from college basketball.
I don't know, Mike. I've heard if you play my Adepticon list, you just give up playing, so you win by default.
I've seen a couple of your lists that would beat most things just because I'm not going to play against it. I refuse.
I have a question for you, kind of in terms of list building. Now, it's something we haven't discussed before. Like we bring it up in like talks and whatnot. And where does picking, like when you're list building, like how do you point efficiency and models with point efficiency factor into your specific list building? I'm not saying they're good nor bad. I'm saying, like, does that come into your mind first? Like, this is the most efficient. Let's start here. Well, because it's definitely a style of list building that, like, you're banking on, like, the average of it's gonna be the best for its bang for its buck, or for whatever it might be, right? So, like, for example, like, anti primes are the most efficient, like, 200 point ally in terms of what they do, right? So, like, almost like when you're like writing a list, like, should I take this? If I don't take it, why do I not take it? Because it is so point efficient. So
Okay.
where does that factor into your guys' thoughts for everything? Because I feel like, if I was a new player, I'd want to find what's the most efficient thing for the money, instead of having to
When you say,
dig through all
just to clarify, Rob, when a new player, you mean points, not money, right?
Yeah, dog.
Oh, just to clarify, just because no, I just
no.
those are
my
two
fault,
very
right?
important conversations.
I'm saying money, right? Like, I'm saying money.
Yep.
My points are my warband, right? Like,
Yep.
that, it's such a good place to start, because it's something you don't have to really think about too much until you start diving into it. Because then you start going to like underworld warbands, right? Like, so, and that they're not always point efficient. Like, you look at Kagra's, like, she's an aspiring champion for 50 or 45 more points, but you can't really, like, evaluating that triple to teleport is insane, right? Like, it's a game changer. So that's 45 points away. If you said, hey, can I tack on 45 points to my anti prime, you could just teleport. Yeah, I'll take it. Right.
Yeah, that's the best divine blessing you can get. Let's add that in there.
Zandar is just the
22
same way,
wounds,
right?
so he has to pay 55 for it, but he can still have it.
Zandar's is the same way, right? Like, with the double for grave breaking, like, I have 2 modes of it, and I could pay attention, and it could have 3 different outcomes all across the map, and that's something that I have to take advantage of, or they have something they have to play around, right? So, like, where do you guys each evaluate points efficiency in your lists?
I don't. The thing is, I'm not sure I actually do in most cases, because
Yeah.
like in the beginning, I'm definitely looking at what's gonna be fun, right? And
Mm.
it like I have literally like 3 boxes of Canine Shadow Stalkers, because I love the team, the
Hell
original
yeah.
twin crossbow team. They got kind of actually like really fun abilities. They look cool, right? I
They
just kind
do.
of think like
Hard to
how
not
to
say
make
they look great.
yeah, they do look great, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, well, how do I make this work, right? Like to me, that's what I do. I look at the warband that I want to play and say in my head, how do I make this work, regardless of like efficiencies. Like within a warband itself, I think efficiencies definitely come more into play rather than in between warbands. Because like if I'm looking at just like pure points for the buck, right? Like everything else on the tabletop, Royal Beast Flayer's ghouls aren't that great for 55 points. They're really not. Like they're 8 wounds,
Right.
they're toughness 3, 3
Well, they're
attacks, 3
worse
strength
than the
1,
regular
3.
flesh eater court schools,
Oh
right? They
yeah,
have a
yeah.
worse
For
they have
for
a worse
5
reaction, and
With a
yeah,
worse
for 5
reaction.
points more, you can get a reaction that actually matters, like Baffling Parlay, versus the Royal Beast Slayer's reaction, which is like the cut me down but worse.
when it's
So
on a
But you don't have
raining
to
Wednesday
you
in
don't
July, perhaps you can do 2 damage to your opponent if they sneeze.
there it is. If they have that 1 life and they're like, I'm disengaging, you're like, got you. Big
but like when I
gameplay.
think
Wrong.
about when I think about like starting that warband, like the only thing I was looking at in my head was the team looks cool, and I really loved pack tactics. I just said, how do I make pack tactics work? And then I just said, we're gonna just spam a ton of ghouls, right? Then it evolved from going from one baron saying, hey, this double to push 3 models is really cool. Cool, let's throw in a second one. So now we have 2 sources of it spread across the map, and it kind of builds up from there for me. Because I start thinking, if you look so much at points efficiency, you kind of start losing like what Warcry is about to a certain extent. Because number one, points can change at any given time, right? What's the most points efficient model that you bought and because you're trying to be a sweat lord goes away, and now it's going to sit in your shelf collecting dust for forever. So that's kind of where I go back to what's fun to you, what looks cool to you, make it work, and you're going to have a lot better time than the person that said, hey, I did the mathematical calculation and this is literally the best bang for your buck on this model.
Unless it's a chimera, in which case it's probably correct, but right, it's for
I mean,
alchemy.
who wants to paint a chimera though? The model's like ancient. It's not worth it.
It's kind of duty looking. I thought it was gonna be way cool. There's probably some sick proxies out there though. Yeah, that's the same, relatively same for me, right? Like when I'm filling out a list and I'm finding all the synergies, then I'll look and say, okay, so what else at this point value is good? And do I take that over anything else of my consideration? And I'll use that as a basis to kind of pivot around. So it's kind of like a central, like, okay, this is what's good for here, but let's try to like see where we can kind of go from that. It's like I take it into consideration, but I don't think it ultimately solidifies things, but it is a basis for me to evaluate what the idea of what I'd want to be spending my points on, right? Like the same thing, Domton, 200 points. He's not doing the damage of a Annie Prime. However, I need his utility of speed and anvil in a pretty low wound warband. So I mean, like that's good. I mean, I guess like what the Prime, I could bless it. It could move 4, sure. Like, but it's not moving 6 to 12, which won me games just because he was able to cover such a distance, right? And also threaten an awesome ult. So like that's just part of the gameplay too. Also, it's a sweet looking model. It's a Stormcast wizard robes. Like it's just sick, dude. So yeah, so I mean, like it's definitely like what you want comes in a factor, but yeah, I don't know.
I feel like I think about it an awful lot, to be perfectly honest.
It's like ancient Rome, right?
Yeah. Big thing for me is like
for Pete, it's
how
the
many
bear.
different.
Pete chooses this as his bear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. How many different things is that model doing, and does that equal to me the worth of the points?
Yeah, that's fair.
Like often, my chaff are doing more than just being chaff. They're either a speed piece or they're a utility piece that can possibly net a much larger target. Mid-grade pieces, do they have action cheating where they can suddenly hit above their weight class? Do they have an ability to boost their damage? I'm constantly evaluating for what I'm putting into the points. What am I getting out of that model? And does it go in multiple directions? And I think that's where I end up building very complicated lists because I'm constantly evaluating how many different directions each individual piece goes.
So you're just tying in like you favor ability and utility of what it is as opposed to just a raw stat block, right? Like,
right.
Because like the old Chimera list with the Nurgle plague bearers, right? Like they were just super efficient for what they were. It's insane. Yeah. Like what they were like, were they 55 points or 50 points or something? 50 points. Like, that's bat poop crazy, man. Right? Like that's
Guano,
just wild.
baby.
Hey man, I didn't curse that time. It's a high five.
Yeah, you've only dropped one F-bomb so far. And you didn't
and I immediately caught it. We're improving for sure. You know I'm trying hard on that. It's like I'm resisting my garbage people roots. So it's
character growth. This is the Rob growth chapter.
I'm in my growth arc. I'm about to flourish this world, baby. So I think I agree with that too, right? Like especially because like you have your own way of evaluating it, but like Arcanauts, right? When they were 50 points, 55 points now, right? When they were 50 points with old FFP, like the value was insane. Like it's so hard to say like, hey, like I can get anything else, but this is just beating anything, even like points up and other chaff. Like it was just like unanimously better than everything.
And I think it's interesting because those were lists and war bands I had really no interest in playing. And I think that's part of the reason is efficiency with the model by itself wasn't enough to pique my interest.
For sure. It's there's a harmony somewhere in the middle, right? Like I think balance is this like the masterwork sign of somebody who's really found it. And it's finding it between like, okay, what's efficient for its cost? Because like I'm not gonna pay 140 for one of the Kagras dudes, one of the warriors, right? Because it's like an exorbitant amount. I'm not going to pay for Morgoth's crushers, right? Like that's insane. Like it's such a bad deal for what it.
Well, what if I have to fight a monster?
Yeah, I mean, okay, dude. I mean, on that other second rainy day.
Isn't it a quad too? Isn't there ability a
the
quad?
Triple.
Okay,
it's
all right,
triple.
let's get some play.
But I think my issue comes in like no matter what in my eyes, I look at a model. I'm like, at absolute worst, this thing just counts as a body and objective and can use the weight action. You know, like. So
that's
what I'm
how Kyle's brain works, everybody. He is a demented man. He just looks at everything in weight action economy.
It doesn't have to do anything. It could just waste your opponent's time, right? And to me, it's like that's a value in and of itself, right? It's a tough body that's just going to stand here and take hits and just wait. That's fine. Make my opponent go, right? But like, I mean, you look at that for a lot of board games, just waiting to see what your opponent does is a legitimate strategy in a ton of board games. So just having a model that does nothing but just hangs out and waits and moves, it's just putting the ball back your opponent's court to let you react to what they're doing. So like that's why I worry less about how efficient is this model? Can it fight? Can it tank and stuff like that? I just look at an absolute worst if this just sat and used the wait action for 4 turns. Would I care? Like.
Well, it creates interesting questions, right? Because it's like me with a Stabgrot kick, right? 45 points. You're right. He's T4, 6 wounds. You can have, was it 3 Stabgrots, or you can have 4 Stabgrots. The 3 Stabgrots each have an extra 4 wounds on them. Is that worth losing the model?
That threshold that you're going from 6 wounds, which is very killable. There's a lot of abilities in the game that are charged. They can outright kill it. Never have to roll a die other than an initiative roll, right? Like that 6 threshold to the 10 threshold is a massively impactful, for how much it can actually be relevant for sure.
But that's where I start looking at action economy too, right? Because you're looking at both wounds and action economy. Like if I have extra actions and your opponent's wasting actions to kill my 6 wound chaff, if they spent a 200-point model killing a 45-point model, I'm probably winning that engagement, right? They're not spending their points in a good way, right? They have to waste the points killing this junk model. And to me, like there's an extreme value in that.
Yeah.
Especially with a
removing a weight
reaction
action
that allows
from you, though. Like that to them is a win. Like if they're removing weight actions, sometimes like it's a bad trade down, but it's also taking away part of your tool to say like you can't wait as much. And then when you get to a certain threshold now of like we're equal activations, try waiting. I'm going to keep punishing you. But then again, you're forcing them to roll better. You're forcing them to get there and engage. You're usually a turn back. Like there's those issues, right? Like how many times like Peter and I are playing each other, Peter has a quad or a bounder boss and something ridiculous is going to happen. And I have to play in such a way that I force him to waste or use dice unoptimally, right?
So
like
this is where like Pete and I are really different too, right? Like Pete likes to have models that can kill. I like to have a game plan that doesn't require me to roll dice because to me, every time you roll dice, it's a chance. Pete could absolutely come up to my skeleton with his giant tyrant and then just roll all ones. Cool. Like that's a win in my book. So whatever I could do in my list building, just say, I don't have to guarantee something because I don't have to kill. I don't have to do this.
It's valid.
And it's just based on, using your actions appropriately or using easy to make abilities with wild dice. Then I'm in a better spot here throughout a tournament because it's consistent, right? Every time you roll dice, you're increasing the level of inconsistency in your warband. The less you have to roll, the more consistent you're going to be.
Well, that's why charge abilities are so interesting on Cavalry, right? The ability to guarantee, like on a 666, I'm going to do 6 damage to you.
Hell yeah.
And knowing that your opponent cannot get out of that. I mean, there's a real play there in abilities like that.
For sure.
Yeah. I think burn in general is something that's very overlooked right now, and I think it's something that's like it skirts around the game mechanics, right? Since there's already no rolling for saves, right? But like you don't even have to roll dice sometimes. You just like here it is, here's this damage, and it doesn't matter if you're T6, 7, 8, 9. You're taking that damage, and it gets scary when you have something like Stormcast where they're paying an exorbitant amount for only 20, 25 wounds, and all of a sudden I just move next to you. It's -6, and then next turn if you don't spend your dice to get initiative to deal with this, I have the chance to even cripple you more or disengage, completely get out of whatever you're planning to do and go do it somewhere else and just kind of terrorize that. Like there's
balling off model stealing charge damage.
That's why like I talked about like pack tactics and why I liked it so much, right? Because it is a burn spell that is only reliant by the number of models within 3 inches. I can control that, right? I can easily control that. I don't have to roll anything. I just have to say, all right, as long as I position myself appropriately, I can guarantee this happens.
All right, I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring on for my side of it too, real quick. It's kind of a broader approach to it, but like
I want to know.
So it's like I think all of us play so much and we think about the game so much. I think there is a natural understanding of efficiency that you develop, and so you're no longer thinking about the specific numbers. You just kind of know what's good. There's definitely profiles that I'm not touching. There's stuff that exists in the game where it's just like I look at it and I go, what would I do with this? What, it doesn't have an ability. It doesn't do any of the things we've talked about here, right? It's expensive and it does not have the value in whatever capacity it is. I'm not looking at like some coefficient of it's points to wounds or this and adding in a third piece of it where it's like points to wounds to output or something like that. I'm not explicitly looking at that, but I do know which pieces I'm interested in, and sometimes I'll dip in if there's a cool ability, and that's real. I mean, there's a probably you could look at it as a quadrant, right? There's efficient pieces that have good abilities. There's inefficient pieces that have good abilities. There's efficient pieces that don't have good abilities. And there's inefficient pieces that don't have good abilities. This quadrant really gets touched, right? That bottom right one that has nothing of value. It's you're playing it because you have it or you have to, or you enjoy the model and stuff like that, right? It does not offer it from a competitive standpoint. It really doesn't offer anything particularly compelling, and it's easy to identify those once you've played enough of the game. I think like that. So I think it's a passive thing. It's not something that I actively think about. But when I go looking for who's the friend I'm going to bring along to this warband, I do kind of know where to start and I know what to filter out. An example of another thing that I forget what my point was. I knew basically I'm looking for like value in it. No, sorry. There's a second point that I wanted to make, and I was like, let me let you guys rumble through it. But trading off the efficiency that you can get, right? Recently I made the warband where I allied in a Saurus foot hero so that I could get Tearing Bite, which is an incredibly spiky damage ability. It does a ton. All of the Saurus and Seraphon get it. It's a really, 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 really good and powerful ability because it can take little cheap things and make them really, really, powerful and strong and can kill things that are well above their points value. And I was trying to figure out which one to bring in, and I had a Slann in the list, and I was like, all right, well, passively I'm going to be able to teleport if I need it, right? That's another flex option. I can use the Slann's teleport to bring this guy here. And I was looking at kind of like 3 different options, and I was like, all right, which one do I want here? And I ended up choosing the guy that did not have the best. He had like 8 less wounds, and I think maybe 1 more toughness. But he had a 2-inch range, and that was super important to me. I decided to go with the guy that can reach out further because I was kind of planning on using this guy as like an alpha striker, right? Like I'm like, I don't want to be sitting here and brawling. I just want to get in, put my damage in, and then try to win again if I have to, and put the damage in again. And so I took a less efficient piece, and kind of like what you guys have all been saying there, right? Where it's the synergy of the ability was super important to me, but also then I also found that the piece that had the profile that worked with the list and what my intent was with it. And I think that's the biggest part is like figuring out. It's hard to figure out what am I doing here, right? And I think that's generally what we're trying to do is. With this conversation today is trying to offer some additional perspective on what are you doing and why are you doing it? Because those are the important questions to answer to get a really good competitive warband, right? Instead of on the table. But I think, understanding all aspects of what you're doing is really important.
And like, it takes a lot too, and takes practice. Like I look at
you spend a lot of time on this game.
Like I look at me just testing like Flesh Eater Courts recently. I was trying to be really spicy, doing Skinnerkin for the free moves, and then running the Gore Warden for the free teleport, not the free teleport, the teleport on the double that the Gore Warden has. And yeah, was I hyper mobile? I could basically win any treasure mission off the bat, but I couldn't kill anything, right? I was like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, I'm really mobile. I could out activate my opponent. This is great. But when push comes to shove, my best attacker is a 4-4-2-4. It's not really gonna brawl enough with somebody. And it's like, I was the quote, like the game, you always have a plan to get punched in the face. That's exactly what kept happening every mission.
I don't think that's the quote.
In the face. I think it's you always have a plan until you get punched in the face.
That's what I meant.
Kyle comes in and goes, God, I can't wait for this face punching to happen.
To be fair, I usually plan that way. Rob knows. I just plan to roll ones the entire night because that's typically what happens to me. But still, right? Like going in there, trying it, and then realize it doesn't play the way you thought it was going to. So I kept playing it, kept getting attacked, things kept dying. I kept feeling like I was on the back foot.
That's your opponent's fault. I think I would put some blame on them. That sounds like
it's not all you, dude.
NPE for Kyle.
So I'm gonna piggyback off that because like Mike, you put everything perfectly, right? Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? It's perfect. That's like a great place for anybody newer who's like listening to this. And if you've tuned in this long, like, thank you. And just like listening, like ask yourself those questions. That's gonna help you. And 2, to what Kyle's saying, one thing I really encourage new players doing, try all your stuff you're thinking in your head. A lot of it is too cute. A lot of it's going to just be like, oh, it's a really clever, cool idea. Have fun, get it off once every 10 games, get it out of your head, and then move on, and then find something to build and learn why it's not effective or learn why it is effective. So like doing this, I encourage that, right? Because like when I went to other games, people are like, this is it. This is the top. You play nothing else, and this is it. You don't learn that way here. You don't learn why things are good or why things are bad, and therefore you don't have a good grasp on the game or why to build your list the way you built it. Or a lot of people come in and they look up and get like a really nasty net list off a tournament or off like a YouTuber, and then like, I went off meta, I went to salty, I found these lists, these are really great, and then we've watched it in league how many times people run it and they just get trucked, right? Because they have no idea why the list works the way it works or why these models are good the way they're good. Instead, it's just saying like, this is what's good, it wins. It's not good enough because there's no self-evaluation in there. So you have to play these cute lists, you have to try these ideas that might be too spicy for their own good. It's the only way to learn and grow in this game is by stumbling first.
And I think if you're putting a list out, if you came up with a list and you want feedback on it, don't just post the list. Don't just throw it out there and go, what do you think? Don't make other people do the work that you've already done. Express it to them. Say, hey, this is, and kind of, some of the link, I'm just going to run through them right here real quick, right? So that you can kind of, talk about what the point of a model is in the list, right? So, and it's mostly, really, the beginning of the list isn't really important when you're looking for critiques. You built it. That's just a place for you to start and understand it. But when you're fine tuning it, we're looking at these kind of more advanced techniques. And we've talked about, right, we're looking at the synergies in the list. Is something creating that synergy between the pieces and doing something together? Are you covering up the weaknesses that you have? Are you trying to shore up so that you're not as, susceptible to being blown off the table by this one certain thing? Or are you just trying to make the best thing that you're doing even better, making that, reinforcing your strengths? Are you adding utility to the list, right? Giving yourself some tricks and stuff like that, or you just making that list more flexible so it has more opportunities to be able to do something powerful, right? Try to express your list in a way that lets people know what you're thinking so that they can really give you more meaningful feedback on it. Because again, I see lists and I'm like, I'm going to have to get into a 20-minute conversation before I even can explain to you why that list doesn't look like it works to me. And it's not that I don't want to help people out, but I'm like, I just don't want to, I don't want to start from the ground up. Bring in what you're thinking about it and ask people, hey, this is why I chose this, is how I expect it to work. And then people can go, hey, this is from all of the testing and stuff like that the community has done, this is how we see that performing. And have you done something different? Oh, that's a really cool way. It didn't work when we did it with A, but we're trying it with B now. And that kind of seems like it's spicy. So, I think that's a really good thing for the community to maybe start doing, is explaining your list instead of just saying, well, is it good? You're like, I can't explain to you why it is or is not without more of a conversation.
I think that's an awesome point, right? And part of playing your best Warcry is also recognizing the intention of your list. Are you trying to take this list to a competitive tournament and close out a win? Or are you just taking this to play your boy and just have a new idea on there and just have a good time? Are you taking this to tell a story? What are you trying to do with it? And finding that out will help you play your best Warcry. Because if you don't know what you're doing even there, or you're just saying like, well, I threw these together, is this good? Like it's very generic. Then we have to say like, well, you could take these options or these, right? It's
and that's okay. But just say that, hey, these are the models I own. So we're not going, well, you should really include a Marrow Scroll Herald in there and go and get a single Moorbag Knight, right? Or, is cost an issue? Because we need context for to be able to help. And if you don't give it, then it's just like, well, we're not going to give you a helpful answer most of the time. We're going to go, yeah, this is what we think is a good answer, and it doesn't necessarily equate to what you believe in.
Right.
Yeah, looking good on paper does not mean it's good on the table.
Exactly. 100%.
What's up, Pete?
Yeah. Well, it's something to keep in mind, right? Because at the end of the day, right, most Warcry players, right, aren't going to tournaments, right? And don't be afraid that you picked out a combo that you think looks fun, and maybe it's not high-end table. Most of my war bands are casual beer throw. No,
okay, all right. Peter changed one model from the spiciest list version. He goes, it's a completely unviable war band. Right. This would have no chance.
But in all honesty, right, building off a combo that isn't going to be high end, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It's just creating intentionality. And I often tell guys, playing a weaker war band is great for you as a player, because it's going to make you a better player. When you play behind, you have to get really creative on how you're going to pull out a win. And it's just
lean on stats. You can't lean on efficiency all the time, right? So you got to find creative solutions to the problem that's in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Don't be afraid to build list off of wacky combos that look like a good time. Like you're going to learn things through that process.
You're allowed to have fun playing the game, and it's encouraged almost.
It's in fact encouraged to enjoy your time here, because if you just chase what's the best, you're gonna burn out, or like it's gonna be no fun. You have to keep the spirit and passion in this game, right? It's like I used to play Commander and Magic, and it was really fun when I first got into it. Oh, these colors, they're expressing this, and I can do this. And then it quickly became a Cold War, and everybody's decks go over $2,000, and games were ending on turn 3 to infinite combos, and then all the passion and fun is sucked out, and then all of a sudden I'm taking a small mortgage out to keep up with it, and like it's just, we're making bad decisions. I'm behind a target doing stuff. Listen, it's enjoy yourself, have fun. It is a hipster game. Play what's good, find good things, express it, dude. Any questions, get in the comments, ask us, let us know. But don't just say, what does this look like? Tell us what you think and why you think it's good. Have fun with it. Like, let us know. Come on Discord. Tell us. Send us messages. We love talking about it. This is all we do with our free time.
All day. Literally all day. We are accessible in some capacity.
Tell me, Rob, why do you like measuring out deployments like a maniac? Well, it's because I'm psychotic. I mean, like, really just come in and ask questions, like really like dive deep into that. Playing your best Warcry is not just winning the game, it's learning how to enjoy it even more and taking it up another notch, like learning to love the hobby you're in,
and learning to like use the rules to your advantage,
and learning to wait
to like a large degree. Because I'll tell you what, I like to use Vulcan Flame Seekers, use the whip on Sephenir to whip that octopus across the board and dump like 24 attacks into somebody. But then when I didn't have a plan for counter and you just die to your own attacks, and you're like, I need to have a plan for counter. Turns out that's a thing, right? Like,
right.
So go after things that already activated.
But then my plan could just be go after people who've already been activated, right?
Which is always Kyle's plan anyway. And just don't get discouraged. If you message Kyle and you don't get a response for a while,
he just tells you wait.
Just know that he's waiting. He is waiting. Give him time. It's just his natural state. He can't help it. He will respond eventually, and it'll probably be great because it always is when it's finally time to act. You guys have any final thoughts? I think we pretty much summarized it really well there. But like Rob said, you got questions, stuff like that. If you want some list critiques, chuck them in the comments. Just make sure you give us context so that we can give you a meaningful critique of it. But we really hope this is helpful. We want more people to enjoy this game. We love this game. Obviously, we spend so much time talking about it, thinking about it, playing it. And our community is incredible. We love adding people to it, reinforcing the people that are already there. Come and play TTS with us. You don't have to, like, there's competitive lists out there. Not everything is crazy spicy, but also maybe if you want to learn about it, you can do that. If you don't, if you want to take these really fun ideas that you have for a warband that just looks like, I love this ability, come play in casual, play around with it, get to play with cool people that, just give you more opportunity to play, get better at the game, start playing even better Warcry, and just, enjoy it, have fun. Come more Warcry, more play, more fun. Like, subscribe. Peace out, everybody.
Yell.
Come to Nova.
Wait,
isn't it be a hero, don't be a chaff, like and subscribe? Come on, we got a slogan here. We got to use it.
All right. I'm sorry. Let me just read it off the script here. It says be a hero for Peter, not a chaff. Since we're hard announcing H's today. Yeah, hit the like button, subscribe for us. Holler at us, talk to us. That's it. We done?
Experiment and have fun.
Dude, this is the first time it's under like 2 hours.
2 hours.
Like,
we could stretch it out. We could.
I mean,
what else do you guys want to talk about?
I could talk about death for another 45 minutes if you want.
All right, bye everybody.
I want to make